right, welcome back to the Agile MSP podcast, where we bring on guests and talk about Agile, Lean, Kanban, these other methods to help MSPs around the world be more efficient and grow their teams. So my name is Wim. I'm the founder of TopLeft, and today I'm excited to have on Dave Sobel, who many of you will know. He's the host of the MSP Radio show, and he's put out hundreds of episodes. I could not listen to all of them to prep for this show, so listened to a couple and excited to have him on. So welcome, Dave.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
So yeah, the episode I chose to listen to that you'd done last year was one where you interviewed, it was a Peter Kajuba, I believe.
Kujawa, yes, of service leadership.
Yeah, service leadership, one of the Connect companies, and talking about their annual report they put out around profitability and growth for MSP. So a lot of insights in there. But what stuck out to me was actually a comment he made at the end is most MSPs are really sucking on project profitability.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'm curious, have you seen that, heard about that? And like, why is that? Let's chat about that.
Well, so there's a certain degree of project work is a different rhythm than the operations of proactive monitoring and management of networks, right? So a lot of MSPs are very focused on the operational portions of, hey, I'm going to run a recurring revenue service around keeping systems monitored, managed, patched, secured, all of the traditional MSP stuff, right? That's the stuff that for 20 years now have been preached as this is the gospel, right? Do this, that will be the foundation of your business. Project work is a different rhythm. And in fact, like it is often like, a different set of skills, particularly for time management, for operations, for measuring that, and often measured on hours, right? In a different way than a proactive managed services. And oftentimes they also don't like it, right? Because there's this element of, well, I want to do everything in a recurring revenue fashion. This pile of work is an interruption, right? Or it's something necessary to get to the managed services. When in fact, the project work can be some of the best work because it's the highest value that the customer receives because it's changes, enhancements, stuff that moves forward. But when you, to your core, like it's a different rhythm and they're trying oftentimes to apply managed services operations against a project rhythm.
Yeah. What I've seen is they're missing a lot of training and examples that doesn't get spoken about, and they're doing it because they have to, but it's like best effort. There's no methods, no methodology, nothing.
Right, exactly. When, by the way, that is some of the best work that is out there. That is the work it can be incredibly profitable. It is some of the highest value that a customer receives. We all talk about the fact of deliver services that you can measure with outcomes of customer business value. Well, there's nothing more valuable than like doing some work and fixing things to make them better. I've put in a new system. I've upgraded them to a new, operating like a new line of business application. I have done a bunch of work to implement several services and pull them all together. All of those have incredibly measurable business outcomes. Customers love that stuff. I pay some money, you do some work, and everything is better. That's what customers want to buy. And oftentimes, because too often the managed service providers are focused on, I want to do this operational work that I think will make me a lot of money, they're kind of missing out on the, wait a second, customers want this kind of stuff.
It's very visible because the managed services we do is behind the scenes, like the security and the cybersecurity, it's all behind the scenes. Like they can't see the benefit of it.
Well, oftentimes it's an operational piece. Like if you think about a profit and loss statement of an end customer, you've got the top line revenue, you've got the cost of goods sold, and you've got their administrative fees. To be fair, all the managed services stuff lives down in administration. Like this is stuff I have to pay, like my rent, and I have to pay, taxes and stuff. And like you're in a pile of stuff that customers kind of aren't excited about. Right. And it's this element of it, and I won't go off on a long rant about it. It's like why cybersecurity is hard. Right. Cybersecurity is hard because like I can give you infinite money, but I'll never promise an outcome. Whereas on project work, I can see you as an MSP and a provider can go in and say, you're going to spend some money. And in the end, you're going to get something that is noticeably better than what you had before.
Yeah.
Sign me up. Sounds great as a customer.
Exactly. So I guess what methods have you seen people using? Have you gotten into Agile and Lean? Have you seen that taking off in this space at all?
So the answer is no, and because oftentimes what I'm seeing is a lot of people without a system at all. And then there's fundamentally, you can always talk about the idea of no system is the worst. Any system is good, right? And then applying the correct system and becoming good at it is best, right? Yep. And so from my perspective, Agile is pretty mature. Like that's a methodology that development's pretty comfortable with, that has been established. We have expertise in that as an industry. And so it feels like it's one of those areas where it's very ripe to it. From my perspective, I'll always say, look, any system, any organized system is going to beat no system. And since most MSPs are in the no system category, let's do it from that perspective. I think Agile makes a ton of sense, particularly because when I think about it from a methodology perspective, it's very good about adjusting along the way. It actually handles situations on the ground very well, like when you discover a new problem or you're introduced to a new variable that you may not have done. This is particularly good in smaller environments, which may be harder to get your hands around like the entire scope of the project. And it also puts you in a position to be able to work very closely with the customer to do analysis on an ongoing basis, and allows them to make changes in a much more fluid, kind of easier way to work with than traditional old school methods like waterfall or something along the lines where you're like trying to design the entire thing out, go away and come back. I find Agile is much more modern in the way that it approach, and also allows you to accommodate the customer better.
Yeah, I really something with waterfall. Like people used to say about we're waterfall or Agile or enemies. I think they're friends. But I realized actually most MSPs are not doing waterfall. Waterfall is really specific to big software development, where you spend like a half year on requirements or a year on requirements analysis. You do some designing and planning. Then like 2 or 3 years later, you start building the thing. You spend 2 years on that, and then you spend a year or 2 years fixing all the bugs and deploying it.
Yep. I agree. I use it as the almost extreme example, right? Because I would agree with you. I think they're all kind of complementary, and they are tools in your toolbox. The other thing about waterfall, and I use it in the loosest sense, because I find that what I'm really implying is that a lot of MSPs want to sit down, design the entire thing, then go off and build and not accommodate changes very well, which is at least thematically the style of a waterfall implementation. You can think about it works well when the project is really, really big. Most businesses are smaller businesses. Most businesses actually work better when you do some improvement and then make an adjustment and decide what's next. And you work on small incremental changes directionally over time, which leans itself very well to the Agile methodology.
Yeah. I talked to hundreds of MSPs, and they're all struggling with projects. Like, just got off the call with one, and they got Autotask, but you set up the wrong way, and their tasks are really small. Like deploy this access point, and they're doing 100 access points for a client. They just polluted so much noise. They're actually using Microsoft Planner to know what's going on.
And I want to divorce the conversation from tools entirely, right? Because a tool is not the solution to why you're bad at projects. No. Like the reason you're bad at projects is you're not being deliberate and intentional about it. And that's like, ultimately, that's the fundamental core decision that you've got to make a choice is you have to be intentional about doing projects and then thinking them through and have a system. Now, this should be incredibly familiar to MSPs because this is all about operational procedures and thinking about the methodology and putting together policies. And it's funny that a group of people that are really good at it operationally wise often incredibly fall down when it comes to these things that they feel is interruptions. Like, no, this is exactly the same thing that you do. If you spend a little time planning, you'll do really well here.
Yeah. Work is work. People are people. Doesn't matter if it's marketing. Like, we actually use these methods and tools for our own work with like marketing and sales at TopLeft here.
It's amazing. I mean, ultimately, these are skills that are applicable in many areas, like, sales, marketing. Like, this is just system implementation, and you're putting, work through a system. In this case, it's, not necessarily recurring work, which is why instinctually MSPs may not be as good at it, but it's the same process.
Yeah. And I remember another client we have is they were trying to build out their PMO and looking for resources on that. But what they've come to 6-9 months later is they let 2 of their project management people go. Another guy's managing it, and they're way more efficient. Like, you don't need that many people. You need less people than you think to manage.
Oftentimes that's the case. It's kind of funny how the two go together.
It's like the mythical man month. Like Fred Brooks had the old book years ago of you add more developers on a project. You double the developers. You're not doubling your productivity. It could even go down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and more meetings.
Exactly. And the complexity is the problem here, right? And because the more you add, you do have to end up with communications and planning, and you will not necessarily, you're not doubling with every person. Yeah. You are actually, thinking about it in different ways. There are upper bounds of this. And it is often why, very, very large projects take significantly longer because of just of the management overhead of communicating all the parts and keeping them directionally going the same way.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, I know you obviously talk a lot about AI and the new technologies and approaches, and that's all important, but it's like the new tools. I'm like, there's always some new thing to do. But the team culture is key, how we get work done, how we integrate these new things. I think that's Agile is just fundamental to that.
Yeah, and AI is disruptive in that it's distinctly going to change the individual productivity of people, and it can also change the productivity of systems. Like I think those are the two things where I think it's particularly disruptive. The other thing about it though is it does require a level of oversight, and I think that oftentimes people are assuming that this is it's instant gains. It's like, well, yeah, there's gains that I'm distinctly finding are in place here, but there's oversight additions as well, to make sure that the automation technologies, if we're playing with generative AI, the checking process through this, like there are governance issues that get introduced with this. I think on par, many of this is going to end up being a net positive, but at the same time, I'm not instantly saying, that's the snap solution to every single part of what we want by just putting AI on top of it.
Yeah, like the RPA automation, the bots, the PIAs and the Roos and ConnectWises or things, that's a lot easier to plug in than that's an automation, but AI is so much more.
When done correctly. Yeah. I think the other element of this is, we've been this idea of pure automation has been an idea for a very long time. And I'm certainly intrigued by this, and I think that there is possibility here. I also, at the same time, want to make sure that there is checks and oversight to make sure that we're understanding what's going on within these systems. Fundamentally, one of the things that I would make an argument for is systems that are more reliable at their core require less of the other things in terms of maintenance on top. So, if we look at this, if I'm just thinking about this in a very broad sense, the best way to create the best customer experience is not to automate away the help desk problems. It's to make the core systems better, like to make them more reliable, easier to use, and to lean into making sure that's the bit so that you can actually then use customer resources on proper business outcomes.
Yeah, and it's redirecting automation AI to the right things. Like, what's the actual bottleneck? Like, are we just automating broken processes? Is it just stuff that doesn't matter? Because you can be busy all day building automation, but is it really impacting the client or profitability?
Right. And you very much have to ask the question of why are we doing this? In my show, I always ask the question, why do we care on every, in terms of all my news stories. And the reason I do that is just to try and put some perspective around the idea of, hey, why is this impactful? And you have to take that approach to the way you're thinking about these implementations with customers. Why should the customer care about this? What's the thing that is making a difference for them on their outcomes? And frankly, the one thing that I keep focusing on is the fact that those providers that lean into answering that question are ultimately the ones that are doing the best because they're very customer centric.
Yeah, that's all what Lean and Agile is about, delivering more value to the client and stripping everything else away. Just being ruthless with stripping away.
Exactly. And you've got to lean into understanding what are the core values, what are the things that you can do right now that's really valuable for them, and understanding what it means for them. Ultimately, that's one of the things that's, is, again, it should be part of the philosophy of managed services providers. The core idea behind managed services was the idea of putting together a value add where you try and measure based on outcome, and we would think of uptime as the outcome. We will make sure that your systems are up because that is the best outcome for the customer, putting you, the provider and the customer on the same side of the table. You have to make sure that that's part of why you're doing what you're doing. That same philosophy applies incredibly well to projects, thinking about why are we doing this? What's the outcome of it that's going to matter to the customer?
Yeah, and that's actually why we're actually rebranding our own two MSPs as well.
Mhm.
And so one is Crafty Penguins. It's all Linux server support. And that's pretty unique. You don't see many of those.
Not a lot
And
of
the other
those
one,
out there.
no, like how many, you talk to hundreds of MSPs, how many of them have you seen just focus on Linux?
Not many.
Not many, yeah.
Not many.
And the other one's a typical Windows MSP, I'd call it, right? So it's Kerkhoff Technology. It's got my name. And we're actually rebranding it next week. So we're here in February 12th, and next week we're launching a new brand. We're calling Improving IT.
There we go. That's it.
So,
and it plays both ways, improving IT or improving it.
Exactly. So we kept it all lowercase because we want the ambiguity there.
I like that. Well done.
It's a core value, unlocking potential, always being better today than yesterday. Really living that out. But yeah, it can't just be the tech. It's got to impact their business as well. So I think it's just really going to shift the conversations we have top down. So it's not just some vision document, but it's who we are. It's got to show up everywhere. Yeah. So what I've seen as well is people get into the AI and these tools, the automation, which is all great. I highly encourage that, but actually not working on their culture and their people and their teams. So that's what I love with the Agile. It's really about this people working together to solve problems. So just curious what you've seen with that, the sort of team building aspect of getting technicians, engineers, everyone involved to collaborate together, strong teams.
So, I mean, there's an element of that. I believe that's sort of fundamental to proper operations of business. People like to lean into that, and yeah, I would agree. I wouldn't disagree with any of those statements. What I would also argue is, and from my perspective, it's sort of table stakes, right? Like it's just you kind of have to just do that. Like I don't want to hold that up as a differentiator. I think it's sad that it is a differentiator because there's so many companies that are bad at it. I just sort of look and go like but from my perspective, it's not actually a competitive differentiator, particularly when I think about it from the customer perspective, right? A bad internal culture ultimately means you're going to kind of be bad at what you do. It's required to be good at it. What actually sets you apart is the difference in execution, right? What is the thing that I'm delivering to the customer that is different? And frankly, I don't think anybody comes to a customer and says, well, our culture is really bad. You should buy from us. So if you're coming and saying, well, we've got a great culture, okay, everybody is going to tell me that as a buyer, right? If I'm the buyer and you're the seller, everyone's going to tell me how great their people are. Yeah. So that instantly makes you not different. What I want to understand as the customer is what are you doing for me today that makes a difference? I would make an argument that we're talking in early 2025. I think the number one thing that customers need help with is the idea of what I call data management. They have a ton of data, and most of it they don't know how to use, execute against, and do something useful with. I think that wraps up the space of workflows, making sure the data is moving correctly to the right people at the right time. What I'm most intrigued about from an AI perspective is the idea of being able to put people in touch with their data. The thing that I say, everyone talks about generative AI right now, and there's all kinds of red herrings on this. I think the one thing that's most interesting is we've built an incredibly useful summarization engine. It is really good at summarizing data. It can take a whole bunch of stuff and it can summarize it for you. And it tends to be really good at rearranging existing stuff, right? Yep. Not asking it to create new stuff. I'm asking it to rearrange stuff. But if you think about this from the reporting perspective, customers need to get information out of their piles of data. Generative AI is really good at rearranging information. Yeah. And so I should be able to go to my data and say, I need to know about our customer execution during this time frame, and I need to be able to pull out this set of data and find that for me. And it's quite good at doing that. It's better than a human in terms of speed. It may be equivalent to most humans on errors, right? So I don't necessarily assume humans are perfect at that either. So if you're pointing me at the right data set that I can then check, that's really good. And so I look at saying the biggest interest area to me around this moment right now is helping customers with data, because in order to be good at the scenarios I've talked about from a generative AI perspective, you have to have a handle on your data. It doesn't have to be all clean. It doesn't have to be all perfect, but you have to know what you've got. It's got to be organized well enough. You've got to have a sense of who gets access to one. You have to have some good governance controls around it. Yeah. And that work, super interesting. By the way, makes really good projects.
Maybe less recurring revenue. I don't know. I haven't personally thought through all of that yet. I know they're obviously just all with the governance and compliance and the policies. There's a spot for a monthly review of that, right? but obviously very juicy projects.
Yeah, but don't fall into the trap, right? What I would sort of say, by the way, as a believer in recurring revenue,
yeah,
I believe you want to move directionally towards things in a recurring revenue service because it makes a lot of sense to implement it that way because you've made it repeatable and you've done it. But don't fall into the trap of knowing, A, everything doesn't have to be that, and B, that everything doesn't have to be that instantly. We may be directionally moving towards that, but as we figure that out and solve problems for customers, it's okay to just do it. And so sometimes the part of movement of getting that done with customers, solving their problems, and not overthinking it to go like, well, everything about this must be a recurring revenue service before I'm willing to do it. Like that just means that you're just waiting for everyone to have actually solved the problem and made it fully commodity. I don't know. I like making money. I'm in the business of high value stuff. And sometimes solving hard problems is not fully solved. So you should probably jump in before it's commoditized.
Yep. Yeah, and the other things will emerge. But it's got focus on the client, getting the impact on them, and the other things will sort themselves out later.
They sort themselves out, right? And you will learn by repeating things what you can make into a system. And I like to think about this from the perspective of, say a craft trade, right? Like initially, if you're designing something, you're probably like building a custom table, right? For example, you may not know exactly what it's going to do and exactly how it needs, but after a while, you start realizing, hey, I have legs, like the legs are always a repeatable bit. I can use that. Maybe the surface is the same. And you get to the point where, hey, my components are systemized, but I can still customize. And then over time, you figure like, oh, 90% of them all look the same. That's the bit that I can implement as a service. And on top of that, I'll customize it. You do that iteratively through something like Agile. And in the end, it ends up being a situation where you've gone from like all of this is something I'm figuring out as I go to something that I have systemized, but I've done it iteratively over time and I've just gotten better at it. And by the way, while I've been better at it, I'm way ahead of my competitors.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking this through, and I think I'd say in my MSP, putting my MSP hat on, the biggest challenge is the skill set, the mindset is very different than fixing servers or Azure deployments or migrations or something, right? It's a very different skill set for people to just make that shit. It's like Power BI or doing SQL reports, very different skill set as well. Like it's almost more of a programmer mindset what we're talking about here with the AI than a technician.
Yeah, it's hard. By the way, I like hard problems because that's where the value is and thus where the profit is. But yeah, this is really hard. This is a hard transformation. But by the way, that we have gone through hard transformations before, right? If we go back in the DeLorean and we go back in time, there was a lot of time where you were building physical kit, right? Where building physical kit was the skill, right? Well, that skill is not highly treasured anymore. No. That bit has gone away. Now there are a subset of people that are quite good at that, and that will be a boutique portion of that, but that's not the bulk skill. And what we're finding now, I would agree with you. Yeah, this is a whole thing. You as the business owner are going to have to be thinking about the kinds of humans you put into your organization that potentially have a very different skill set than you've had before.
Yeah.
Yep. Change is a pain. Welcome to the game.
Yeah. But it just feels like a whole new business or line of business. Like doing web development, like you don't just retrain your Windows technician to do web development. It's like a whole other hire, right? So
potentially, I think build or buy is always the answer, right? You can go out and buy new talent that helps you bring those skills. You can build it in-house through education and investment. There are people that can't, I don't necessarily buy into the idea that people are only capable of doing one thing. I think that they are capable of growing over time. Not all people in all directions, and they are not replaceable cogs. But at the same time, I don't want to be completely dismissive and say, hey, the people that I have with me cannot do anything else. I think that's limiting, and I wouldn't endorse that. But I would say you have a build versus buy mentality. Am I going to take the time to invest in building the people that I need in my organization, or am I going to have to go out and buy those people with skills and bring them in?
So I don't know, do you get a story of an MSP who has really figured this out No, I don't know if to mention a name, but what success stories have you seen so far with people actually making money and it's sustainable and they're going in the right direction?
Well, I mean, all it takes really is looking at some of the growth organizations that are out there, right? The MSPs that are accelerating in their growth have moved beyond just the idea of we deliver help desk service security services, right? If you go look at somebody on an accelerated growth path, that's not the conversation they're having with their customers. They're having an entire, we are working with you to make sure your technology serves your business needs conversation. And in order to do that, they're employing very smart analysts to be able to work with that. And you can do it at a small scale. A small organization can do it. And we see it in the success of the larger ones. The larger ones are using a combination of people when they go into and engage with a customer. And that's the skill set that they're working with is not just going in there with, hey, we're going to do a bunch of technical assessments and then sell you a managed service. We're going in, doing a business process analysis with you. We're walking through the piece. And so the answer is, yeah. When I go look at the accelerating best-in-class MSPs, what I'm finding is a mix of that. You referenced the service leadership data. When I actually go look at the best-in-class businesses, they're not pure play managed services component. They have a project-based component, and oftentimes that's driven through business analysis to be repairing and improving upon business processes.
Yeah, so I guess what's, as you wrap this up, just other advice around this for people just getting into this journey, whether it's the AI or the Agile, just how to be better today than yesterday? What's the path forward? So
it's kind of twofold, right? So I think the element is that it is one step at a time, right? I think that is really the element of it. There's the old quip: how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time, right? Like big problems, you don't have to necessarily solve all at once. You have to be moving directionally in the right direction. I think the other element of that is having really good filters, right? To focus on the things that are important and the things that are a distraction. One of the things that I often talk about is the fact that I think for most MSPs, they over-rotate on spending too much time on their tool set and not nearly enough on their people and process side of that. The infinite debates over what's the best RMM and what's the best, all that stuff is completely irrelevant, right? Like that stuff is just not that important. It's like debating which is the best hammer. Okay, they're hammers. They drive nails. Are you good at driving nails? Let's have that conversation. And so I think putting a really intense filter on your activity to make sure that you're doing it is thematically aligned with the idea of Agile, is to focus on the stuff that is actually impactful. I say ultimately you want to spend a lot of time thinking about, hey, what are the customer problems that I want to solve and how do I do that? And what are the things that customers are interested in? Notably, while I am very realistic about the need for cybersecurity, I am also not over-rotated on the idea that this is what everyone wants to talk about. Because most of the customers I talk to, not really all that interested in cybersecurity, right? They actually want to talk about how am I going to use technology to make my business a little bit better? And how can we make sure these systems are not so painful to use? If we actually do those things, we can make a real difference in the business. Oh, and while we're doing that, let's do that in a thoughtful way that is secure and thinks about data and doing all of that. Yes, I assume I want that, but I don't want to have that first conversation. I want to actually have a conversation about making my business better. And if I lean into that, so actually my element, you asked for the advice, it's, small steps every single day, thinking about small improvements, how we can be a little bit better today than we were yesterday, how tomorrow can be a little bit better than today. And that is best done thinking big directionally and implementing small movements every day that point me in the right direction.
Yeah. Building a North Star BHAG. We're going towards that, but one day at a time.
Yep. One day at a time.
It's like the eating the elephant. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? I actually Googled that. And the answer was interesting. Somebody tried elephant. He's like, it's the most disgusting thing ever. It's not very good meat.
You can try everything once. I at least need to know I've not tried elephants, so I would have to try it in order to know that. But at the same time, if someone tells me that, I will learn that lesson from others.
Yeah. So you've done hundreds of podcast episodes, and which I recommend everyone to go check out. But is there a couple, maybe one or two you can reference just regarding this, like AI adoption and such?
Well, I'm talking about AI daily. So I was remember one of my basic point of doing the podcast is every single business day, I'm putting out a 10-minute news show to give you the things that I think are important. I talked about curation and being incredibly focused. That's the point of my show, is the idea of I'm spending hours and hours every single day reading all the news sources. So you, the business owner of an MSP who's busy and do not have time to do that, can say, well, Dave knows this space. He's looked at it. What are the stories that he thinks are important today? And in 10 minutes, or faster if you like accelerated speed on a podcast, you can get those insights. And every day I answer the idea of why do we care? So you don't have to spend all your time reading all this stuff, keeping up with all this stuff. Instead, listen to the show, get some insights, and then take the elements of that you think are right, implement in your business. And I always quip, if you think I'm wrong, do something different. Go forth, take that information, do something different, come back and tell me how I was wrong and how you did it better.
Yeah, I think a key message I got from your content is the need to really be evolving and moving forward. Like if we keep doing what we've been doing the last 5-10 years, like we're dead, right? Like that's that need to really lean into that, and can't be status quo. We can't just be optimizing what we're doing. We have to be moving ahead some way, right? And if you can't, then sell or merge or go or combine with somebody else who is, right?
And I think we're at an interesting time in the industry, right? The tide has always been rising. And everyone likes to talk about the idea of like the rising tide. What I also think about is the bar at the bottom has also been rising. For me, one of the most impactful stories of the past couple of months was one that I noticed between two MSPs where and they told this, by the way, on LinkedIn and did not notice the irony when they told this story. One was visiting the other, two established MSPs, right? So these are, large public, private equity funded guys. One's visiting the other, has trouble connecting his laptop to the host's Wi-Fi. He operates a world-class help desk, but instead he turned to ChatGPT, asked about his problem, and got a solution. And if that doesn't send up flares to most managed services providers, the way they should be thinking about their core services, I don't know what to say to you. Because, I looked at that and I said, he literally owns and operates a help desk and did not use his own help desk to get help. How do you expect that? Like at some point, customers are going to realize that they can use these systems in new ways. You need to have governance. You need to think about the implication of this. I'm not advocating for attaching generative AI chatbots to all your data. But at the same time, there are elements of what have been core services to managed services that will get transformed by this technology. You cannot ignore that idea, in terms of the way this is being implemented. You must be thinking about the fact that your core service is going to be impacted by technological change. This isn't new. This has been happening every iteration of technology the entire time. We can talk about the consumption of the cloud on the, on-prem. We can talk about the way mobile impacted, laptop, desktop sales. We can transformation of the cloud and the internet, moving things away from the edge. All of these have been transformational. We have another round of this that I see as incredibly impactful. Got to start thinking about that.
And it's in so many places. Like I'm just thinking things that I'm doing is I would go to an advisor or consultant or somebody to do a project for me because I don't got the time and they got the expertise and you pay them all the money. And now it's like, I can get it right now on a ChatGPT prompt. Right. So it's not a 5-hour consulting project. It's 5 minutes. Right.
Or it might be an hour at the end. By the way, it might be an hour at the end to verify the plan that I've put together that I've been able to do quickly with generative AI, and that I need the human expertise at the end to make sure that that this is verified. Right. Yeah. I think that model may end up being specifically something that we all start thinking about. That should be something that providers start thinking about themselves, because that is a very high value bit. I've put together this plan. I need humans to double check this with actual expertise, right? Who have done this in the field multiple times. That combination is ultimately where it works the best. In fact, there's new research I just covered on my podcast where Microsoft and Carnegie Mellon actually researched that combination of human thought against critical analysis on the AI output is best for both, because it actually makes sure that the humans themselves are not degrading in their critical thinking skills by interacting and questioning with the AIs correctly. So I think this is where it's going directionally. By the way, a lot of people not talking about it in those terms.
Yeah. I work with a business advisor, and how he's using AI is crazy. Like it's really inspired me. But like he I'm paying the most for this coach that I've ever had, right? It's more than a lawyer. Let's put it that way.
Right.
A lot of money, but he's taking documents. I send them. He puts in a folder. He preps for the meeting. Very, very powerful 1 hour conversation on the clock. It's recorded. He puts that into AI and then gives me a really good like action plan out of that. I'm like, wow, this is like huge leverage.
Know what I said earlier. They're very good at transforming existing information. What you've just described is exactly that philosophy, right? It's the expert is creating it once and transforming it in multiple ways, transforming the inputs so that they're ready for analysis, then working with you in detail and then creating that product, right? The value in the meeting, and then transforming that product again in multiple ways. That philosophy works really well.
Yeah. And that's what we'll be doing with this episode. So we've already got the prompts planned to take the transcript and repurpose it and transform it. So it's been a delight to go all over the place, Dave. Thank you for coming on.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. This has been great fun.
Yeah, my pleasure. So thanks. And maybe we'll talk again or meet somewhere at an event. So
look forward to it. If people are interested in what I'm doing, all of the links to my show are available at businessof.tech.
All right. Perfect. And we'll put the links in the description, all the usual things. So click through, and thank you, everyone.